Hi everyone, I'm John Navarre, creator of EgyptTravelBlog.com, host of the Egypt Travel Podcast, and editor of Middle East Travel and Tourism. I'm also the creator of this website, GrandEgyptianMuseum.org, which documents the history, developments, and updates about the new crown jewel of tourist attractions in Egypt, the Grand Egyptian Museum. You see, in the first 16 years after the government of Egypt announced that a new museum would be built to house the country's exquisite collections of ancient artifacts and treasures, no one ever bothered to buy the domain name for the new museum, which, since it's a museum and not a company, of course, is a .org. They never bothered to get the domain name for this new billion-dollar museum, and instead just had info about the new museum project on an obscure subpage of another government website. And since there's always a lack of sufficient news and updates coming from the government about new projects and developments like this, even one as big and grand as the new Grand Egyptian Museum, 5 years ago I decided just to buy the domain name GrandEgyptianMuseum.org myself and do them a huge favor by building an informational website about the history and development of the Grand Egyptian Museum, as well as news updates as the project progressed, since no one else seemed to want to do this for the public. And by the way, this was after 2 years of trying to just give the domain to the ministry, but not getting a single returned phone call or email or anything. So after 2 full years of trying to give them the domain name, I built the website you see now on it in order to keep the public updated on the development of the new museum, and more importantly, to give everyone updates on its expected grand opening, which of course has been delayed several times. And since I know that's most likely why you're here, to get an update on the current status of the Grand Egyptian Museum, and to find out when it might finally open, let's go ahead and dive right into talking about that exact topic. First and foremost, let me just tell you that an opening date still has not yet been set. I'm recording this video in mid-May of 2023, and we still don't know when the new Grand Egyptian Museum will open. And by we, I mean both the public and even the staff and management of the gym do not yet know when the government will decide to open it. That decision is still in the hands of Egypt's president, President al-Sisi, and he alone will decide when the best time will be to finally open the Grand Egyptian Museum. You have to understand that it's not just about what's desired by or convenient for tourists coming to the country. There are a lot more factors that have to be considered in deciding on an opening time frame. For obvious reasons, Egypt wants to leverage and maximize this opportunity, so it has to plan well in advance for a time when the most senior foreign dignitaries can travel and attend the opening ceremonies to help lend it more gravitas and get more press coverage worldwide. So I'm sure that Egypt's foreign ministry is coordinating with the embassies and foreign ministries of many countries in the region and around the world to get commitments for their heads of state and senior ministers to come to Egypt and attend the new museum's opening. The other big issue behind all the secrecy and silence about an opening date should be quite obvious: security. An event that the entire senior Egyptian government leadership will attend, including probably the entire cabinet, the president, senior diplomats and military leaders, as well as foreign heads of state and honored guests from all over the world, will all be in attendance in person, and the same location is not something that you want to broadcast the timing of long in advance. Yes, I know that tourists wanting to visit Egypt in 2023 might be inconvenienced by the lack of information from the government. But just keep in mind that one of Egypt's top responsibilities, and one that it takes very, very seriously, is keeping visitors safe, which is something they do here very, very well. But believe me, when the grand opening date for the Grand Egyptian Museum is announced publicly, you will be the first to know, as long as you're either subscribed here to this channel or on the announcements email list at GrandEgyptianMuseum.org, so that I actually have a way to communicate with you and tell you when it's announced. So if you're not already subscribed here and or signed up to receive the opening announcement from GrandEgyptianMuseum.org, then by all means, make sure you hit subscribe on here and sign up at GrandEgyptianMuseum.org so that you can get the announcement when it finally comes out. But until then, Let me tell you more about what I can share publicly with you at this point regarding what's currently going on at the Grand Egyptian Museum here in Egypt. While the full museum is not open to the public yet, some parts of the new museum are already open, and you can actually go inside of the new museum building, which itself is an architectural masterpiece, to visit these areas that have already been opened to the public with an advanced reservation. The areas that are currently open to the public include the exterior courtyards, two of the interior atriums, the North Atrium and the Grand Central Atrium, from which you can see but not go onto yet the grand staircase that goes all the way up to the southern all-glass facade which overlooks the pyramids of Giza, and the new shops, restaurants, and cafes that are incorporated into the new museum complex. Now, this may not seem like a lot to visit, but it is still actually quite spectacular. The building itself is just a work of art, and getting to visit the inside of it and walk around about a third of it freely already is honestly a true privilege and a very worthwhile experience. Note, though, that I have not mentioned any of the exhibition halls, which hold most of the ancient artifact and treasure collections. Now, I say most because there is some ancient statuary on display in the two atriums, which you do get to go into, and on the grand staircase, which you're able to see and admire from the Grand Central Atrium. However, a visit to the gem for now is basically a visit to admire the building itself and its unique architecture, not to see the artifact and treasure collections. Most of those are still on display at either the Old Egyptian Museum, the big pink one in Tahrir Square in central Cairo, or the other new museum in southern Cairo called the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, or the NEMC for short. The highlights of King Tut's burial treasure are still on display in the old museum, and they likely won't be moved over to the new museum until the very, very last minute. And it will probably be done as part of a huge grand public procession like they did when they moved the Royal Mummy Collection from the old museum to its new home in the Civilization Museum, the NEMC. One of the most frequent questions I get about major museums in Cairo is whether there is still enough on display to make a visit to the old museum worth it, and whether visitors who come to Egypt before the new museum opens will miss anything big. And the answer to that understandable question is still this: yes, the major artifacts and treasures are still at the old museum. Yes, they will remain there until the new museum opens. And yes, it is absolutely still worth visiting the old museum. The thing that everyone needs to know about the Old Egyptian Museum in Tahrir Square is that it used to be so packed and crowded with artifacts that it was more like a warehouse than a museum. Giant statues and pieces of temple walls and tomb contents were just stacked and stuffed in every square inch of this old museum before they started spreading the collections around and sending some stuff over to the new conservation labs at the gem to be cleaned and repaired and neatly placed into their new display cases in the exhibition halls of the new museum. The result of that situation was that when they did start moving some of the old museum's contents out of it, it started to feel more like what we think of as a museum and less like a cluttered warehouse or an episode of the TV show Hoarders. So don't worry, there's still plenty to see, more than you would ever even have time to see anyway, in the Old Egyptian Museum in Tahrir Square. And then there's also the other new museum, the NEMC, which has been open already since April of 2021, and which is now the home of the Royal Mummy Collection. This is also a must-visit place if you want to complete your museum's experience in Egypt. But let's return to talking about the gem, the Grand Egyptian Museum. For anyone who absolutely cannot wait until the grand opening and wants to see a little more than is currently open to the public inside of the gem, they are still doing the private VIP tours, which are, in my opinion, outrageously priced at over $2,000 per person. But in these tours of the gem, you get access to only 3 additional areas that are not part of the trial visits right now. And those are 1, the grand staircase, most of which you can see from the main atrium anyway, but on the VIP visits you get to go onto the grand staircase and all the way up to the top and view the Giza Plateau through the giant glass facade on the south side of the gem. Number 2, the conservation labs, which will very likely be closed to the public even after the gem opens officially, because that's the private workspace of the restorationists and technicians who are handling and cleaning priceless artifacts. So going inside of those labs and seeing that process in action is actually a very special privilege. And 3, the reassembly hangar for the second funerary boat of King Khufu, who was the builder of the Great Pyramid. We have discovered so far 2 funerary boats, or solar boats, for Khufu, which were disassembled and buried in special pits beside the Great Pyramid about 4,500 years ago. The first of these was reassembled and on display for many years inside of a purpose-built building just to the south of the Great Pyramid inside of the Giza Pyramids complex. But that solar boat was moved a few years ago over to the gym and hasn't been available to the public to see again since then. But this second funerary boat of Khufu is currently being cleaned and reassembled in a separate hangar by a team of Japanese and Egyptian archaeologists. And this is the one that people who pay for these private VIP tours of the gym also get to see. So if you think it's worth it to drop $2,000 per person to see these 3 additional areas of the gym, that's what you'll get to see. But if that's out of your budget, the other areas of the gym that are currently open to the public are still very much worthwhile, even if they don't include any artifacts or treasures or ongoing restoration work. The fee to enter the Grand Egyptian Museum now, on one of these trial visits of the limited public areas that are open, is currently set at 1,000 Egyptian pounds for foreigners and 150 Egyptian pounds for Egyptians. As of this month, May 2023, 1,000 pounds is about 33 US dollars or about 30 euros. The other neat thing about these limited trial tours of the gym is that the museum has its own team of staff guides who show you around the open areas and spend about 30 to 45 minutes talking about the museum's history and development and about the statuary and artifacts that are on display in these open areas. Most notably, the hanging obelisk outside of the main museum entrance in the exterior courtyard, and the giant statue of Ramses II, or Ramses the Great, which is the centerpiece of the grand central atrium. But there are a few other pieces scattered around these 2 atriums that they also discuss while visitors walk around and they're showing you around and answering questions. They're currently doing 4 of these guided visits per day, starting at 10 a.m. and then again at 12 p.m., 2 p.m., and 4 p.m. And no, by the way, you cannot just show up and buy a pass to enter on the spot. You actually have to have an advance reservation, not only to get into the museum complex, which is scanned by a staff member to check its validity when you enter, but you cannot even get through the main entrance gates and into the parking lot unless you have a ticket for that day to show to the guards at the gate. When you do go, again with an advanced reservation, and you pass through the main entrance and security checkpoint, the museum's staff guide assigned to give the public tour for your reservation slot will come out to the shaded benches in front of the hanging obelisk in the main front courtyard to gather everyone up. They'll introduce themselves and begin the guided visit. They offer 1 tour in English and 1 in Arabic at each of the 4 time slots previously mentioned, 10, 12, 2, and 4. And occasionally they also add an additional one in another language if there are enough people who don't speak English. But I wouldn't count on that, to be honest, because it's not always the case. If you're coming with a group and you do want a guided visit in a language other than English or Arabic, feel free to shoot me an email at john@egyptelite.com, and I'm happy to connect you with the right people at the gym who can schedule a non-English language guided visit for you. So how do you go about booking one of these limited trial visit slots to the gym now? Well, in typical fashion, they have set up some obscure and oddly named website with a not so legitimate looking online reservation and purchase feature that most people who visit are a little freaked out by, to be honest, because it looks a bit like a scam site that was done about 20 years ago. In fact, I get emails every single day from people all over the world asking me if that's really the correct place to go buy gym trial visit tickets because they're unsure if it's legitimate or not. So for anyone who cannot find that website that they've set up temporarily to sell trial visit tickets, or for anyone who is worried that the site they did find is not the correct or legitimate site, and since GrandEgyptianMuseum.org should really be the official site of the Grand Egyptian Museum anyway, I've actually added a link to the homepage at GrandEgyptianMuseum.org that will get you to the correct and legitimate place to make an advance reservation and purchase legitimate tickets for the trial visits to the Grand Egyptian Museum. So just go to grandegyptianmuseum.org and look for the link on the homepage that says Gem Trial Visits. And that will get you to the right place to buy official tickets from the Gem and from the ministry. And lastly, since I've been focusing on the artifacts and treasure collections and the architectural significance of the Gem building itself, I want to also mention something else about the new museum that I find very impressive and which also makes a visit now, even without the exhibition halls being open yet, still totally worthwhile. And that's the shops and restaurants that are in the Gem. The shops and restaurants and cafes are pretty much all open and fully functional now. You can actually already have breakfast or lunch there inside of the Gem and browse as many shops and boutiques, which I'll talk about in a second. But you still do need to purchase an advance reservation ticket to get into the Gem, even if you just want to go there to have lunch. You can't just show up and say you're going to one of the restaurants inside and expect them to let you in. Just like at the Giza Pyramids complex, where there are 2 amazing restaurants inside of that complex, you also have to reserve and purchase a ticket to enter the Gem, even if you're just going in to go to a restaurant or a cafe or a shop inside. For restaurants, they have several full sit-down dining spots, such as Zuba, which is a famous Egyptian restaurant, and 30 North, which is my personal favorite. And you also have several dessert places like Bittersweet and Dolato, and some smaller cafes and coffee shops like Beano's, and yes, there's even a Starbucks. And before anyone gets mad at Starbucks, no, they didn't just put themselves in the Gem. They had to be invited to open a store in there just like everyone else. It really is a curated list of nice upscale establishments in each category. Although given the fact that there will be tens of thousands of visitors per day, maybe per hour once the Gem formally opens, I don't know that they'll actually have enough dining options for that many people who will surely want to take a break for lunch or a snack while touring this massive complex throughout the better part of a full day. So hopefully they'll open up a few more, but the ones they already have in there, which are fully operational now, are excellent. And speaking of excellent, the curated list of shops and boutiques they have inside of the same area between the 2 atriums is also just another level for Egypt. And even the specific items they have on sale at the official gift shop are intentionally curated and of exceptional quality. I have to say that I was very, very impressed when the museum's official gift shop finally opened, and I got to go inside and browse around. You know, I've been in and out of Egypt for 20 years now, so I never buy stuff at the tourist sites anymore. But the first time I went into the Gem's gift shop, I walked out with literally about 4 shopping bags full of stuff. I had to have 2 assistants help me carry it to the car. They have amazing books in there. They have really nice, unique dishware and decorative items for the home. They have lots of really interesting and fascinating things for kids. It really is a well put together official museum store. And beyond that, there are also about a dozen other upscale boutiques from famous brands in Egypt for art, jewelry, clothing, and a lot more. The boutiques in the Gem are really next level nice for Egypt, and you'll really enjoy browsing and shopping at these 2 while you're there. I've been to the Gem about 10 times already, including both the private VIP tours I talked about earlier and the limited trial visits, both guided and unguided. And I have to say that I really, really enjoy going there every time, and I'm still not tired of going. And one more thing I do have to mention before I wrap up is that the staff there at the Gem is truly next level. The company managing the Gem's operations is doing a fantastic job of recruiting and hiring and training truly excellent staff. They're all multilingual, they're elegant, they're knowledgeable, they're very well trained in how to do their specific jobs, which if you've been to Egypt before, you'll know that even in nice places like hotels and restaurants, that isn't always the case here. But Hassan Alam has done a fantastic job in properly staffing the Gem, and every time I go there, it's just a pleasure to interact with the people who work there. They're top notch, and I'm very proud of Egypt for how nice the new Grand Egyptian Museum is and how amazing all of it is going to be when it finally opens to the public. Which brings me back to the big question I started with here that's still in everyone's mind. When will the Gem fully open? I know I've said this before, and I think I'm always good about explaining my reasoning behind informed guesses and estimates. And there were some really very well-reasoned predictions in the past that obviously turned out to be not true in the end, but my current thinking is that the gym will open in November or December of this year, 2023. I'm not saying it surely will, and there are no guarantees of any opening date until the government of Egypt makes the official announcement. However, my guess, in my opinion, is that we'll probably see it open before the end of this year finally. But, as I've said before, do not wait until the opening announcement is made and expect to be able to book travel to Egypt in the next few weeks or even months after that date. You know why? Because everything is going to already be full here. The best hotels, the best tour companies, the best tour guides, the best drivers and vehicles, and especially in places like Luxor and Aswan, where even now, without the gym opening, we're already seeing many people being turned away for certain dates during the upcoming high season this winter because places are already full in those small places. Even without the gym open yet, tourism here in Egypt has bounced back stronger than it was pre-COVID. So don't screw around and wait until the last minute to book travel to Egypt and make arrangements for getting around Egypt and booking with a company to help you with your plans here in the country. Of course, if you want to travel here with the #1 Western-led tour company, you can check out EgyptElite.com, and we're happy to have a chat with you about travel to and around Egypt and help make your trip of a lifetime to Egypt a very smooth and a very luxurious reality. Egypt is a bucket list destination for literally everyone on the planet. And when you come here, you need to do it right. You need to do it safely and with the best organization and logistics and staffing so that your dream of coming to Egypt and seeing the pyramids and the tombs of the pharaohs and the temples of the gods, that will just take your breath away, so that this dream comes true in the most magnificent and worthwhile fashion. After all, you've waited your entire life to come here to Egypt, and nearly your whole life for the gym to open too. So when you finally do come here, when you finally make that trip of a lifetime to Egypt, you owe it to yourself and everyone coming with you to do it right, and to have everything go smooth and to truly enjoy yourself while you're here. You're worth it. Egypt is worth it. And very soon, the gym, the Grand Egyptian Museum, will be worth it too, and worth the wait. That's all for this update. Expect another one coming soon when we have more news to share from here on the ground in Egypt. Be sure to check out EgyptTravelBlog.com and the Egypt Travel Podcast for detailed insider info about travel to and around Egypt. And make sure you're subscribed here and on GrandEgyptianMuseum.org for more news and updates about the gym, especially for news about the all-important official opening announcement, whenever that finally does come down from on high. Until then, ma salama everyone.